This video is brought to you by Harold Sack, who gave me a massive 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Miss Bumbleflower versus Afara, Thraximundar and Thassa. 4 blue decks, this should be interesting. Triskull Land can get us in 2 more mana, a bit more card filtering with the Fairy Mastermind, so we will try this one. Draw into another land, don't mind seeing that. Thassa plays Seal of Removal to bounce a creature. Just lands for the other 2 player and we get into another land ourselves, so that's good. Starting with just 1 land that produced any colours and now getting into multiple other ones. So a Wall of Roots, that was weird. Are you going to show us the Wall of Roots? Magic Online being weird, it's a few minutes into the game. There we go, Wall of Roots, so we can put a -0, -1 counter on this, which will obviously be taken away by the plus counters of the Bumbleflower, and we'll add a green every time we activate that, so could go for the commander next turn, and assume that it's going to get bounced by the Seal of Removal, and then seeing a standstill. Whenever a player casts a spell, sacrifice it, and each of that player's opponents draws 3 cards. I wouldn't play around that personally, doesn't seem as though Thraximundar is going to either. So standstill is sacrificed and each of us, apart from the Grixis player, will draw 3. Going for a Tiny Bones, so he might even want the multiple cards to be in hand so that we've always got something to sacrifice. We drew the Growth Spiral, Evolution Witness and the Swords to Plowshares. And now a Kjeldorn Outpost into play. They had to sacrifice the plains in order to do that. Managed to get out a Thought Vessel though, and has 9 cards in hand, but obviously an unlimited hand size with that. White Mane Lion for us, when we've got more mana, we'll be able to cast 2 spells in a turn consistently with that. So do we go for the Growth Spiral here or not? That'll leave us with 3 mana, so we could always go for the Fairy Mastermind. Yeah, I think we're best getting down an additional land here. Alright, drew into a Plains, so throw out the Plains. Play the Alchemist's Refuge for the turn. Unfortunately, we can only activate this thing once a turn, so yeah, could go for the Evolution Witness so that we don't have to discard it. Might as well. I would get down the Fairy Mastermind, but we're struggling on blue mana at the moment. Should point out that with Evolution Witness and something like the Urza's Bauble, Jeweled Lotus, or the Lotus Petal, those are the 3 0 mana artifacts that sacrifice themselves in the deck. With Evolution Witness, one of those 0 mana artifacts and the Miss Bumbleflower in play, we can combo off, casting infinite spells and therefore getting our opponents to draw their entire decks. So we could set that up and show what you would do in paper. We're not going to do it on Magic Online because it would be a million clicks and obviously going to waste our opponent's time with that. A Font of Fortunes now, 2 and sacrifice to draw 2. Yeah, very much aware of how shy we are on blue mana now with a grip full of blue cards in hand. The Tiny Bones goes to the left, and deciding to point the Tiny Bones at standstill, and does decide to cast it. This early in the game, like I said, I don't think anyone's going to really play around this. Evolution Witness can come in handy for fetches as well, if we want to activate that. It does activate itself. I imagine we're going to encourage our opponent to use the Seal of Removal on our commander here, but I mean, that's fine. So let's play Miss Bumbleflower. They might want to keep the Devotion in play if they're looking to get Thassa down soon. So Standstill activated and our opponents are going to draw 3, but we are not. And I don't think there's much point in going for the White Mane Lion just because. We'll leave it there, I think. So I'll swing into the left against Thassa as well just to show my opponents where I'm looking. Mental Discipline now, plenty of permanents with blue mana pips obviously, and for 2 and discard, draw a card. Temple of the False God, not going to tap for mana until next turn most likely. I imagine he has another land. Didn't notice this land previously either. Sunken Palace is 2 tap, exile 7 from the graveyard. Add blue, and whenever you cast a spell or activate an ability, copy it with that mana. Going up 4 mana here, an Ancient Tomb and a Mana Crypt. That's what the additional card draw can get you. Only has 1 blue available to him still though. And there is a Burglar Rat. Alright, so we could go for getting rid of a permanent here. Yeah, let's go after Alandra being discarded because we don't have double blue yet. And if they want to try and bring Tiny Bones in towards us to grab that, then they can, but we can swords the tiny bones if we don't want them to have it. We'll see what they do first. Discarded here was an island, so he's got multiple lands in hand. Path of Ancestry here, so I would assume Tiny Bones is coming in our direction. All the fast mana, a mana vault now. So yeah, Tiny Bones in towards us. It might be that he's got some interaction for this, so that's why he played the mana vault, so that he could both get the creature in and use his removal in response to no blocks. This Bumbleflower, we will point the card draw over at Ifara because Ifara isn't doing too well with regards to the mana here. Plus counter can go on the Evolution Witness and that can grab the Alandra back anyway. Alright, so now there's a snap going on to the Tiny Bones, which we assume that they had. We assume that they had something like that, but we're getting Alandra back to our hand regardless. And they will untap their mana. So the Evolution Witness triggers when we put a plus counter on it. And there goes Alandra, the legendary creature, back into our hand. If we can fix our colours, then we don't have to waste cards like Swords to Plowshares. We'd rather be going for things like Snap. But hopefully next turn we'll be able to start doing that stuff. Alright, tap down his blue mana into a Virus Beetle. So each opponent discards a card again, so we'll just discard the Alandra again, because we know we can grab it back. Discarded this time was a Steel Enchantment and another island. Ifara, God of the Polis, into play for the first time. Now the aim of this deck is that we want to be doing double spells and playing at instant speed on our opponent's turns in order to maximise the number of double spells we can do, and it amazingly looks as though we're going to be able to untap with Miss Bumbleflower, which I didn't think we'd be able to. Alright, Kami of Whispered Hopes is a good one to get into here. So we want to get that down now so that we can get into more mana for next turn. So yeah, Kami of Whispered Hopes. Bumbleflower again, I'll point at Ifara because of the whole mana thing. Put a plus counter on the Wall of Roots to get rid of one of the minus counters. Okay, it doesn't work the same. +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters cancel each other out. But obviously the power and toughness is different with -0, -1, so we're negating the toughness loss either way. But the whole time we're buffing up power for every plus counter we put on there. Let's see here. Yeah, we'll be able to go Snap and then the Fairy Mastermind maybe. So we want to double spell here simply to draw another couple of cards. So White Mane Lion into play. Bumbleflower pointed at Ifara again. And we can do a plus counter onto the Evolution Witness just to get the Alandra back because we might be able to play that next turn. So we draw the 2 cards from Miss Bumbleflower, triggering for the second time in one turn. And it was 2 plus counters onto the Evolution Witness thanks to the Kami being in play. So now the White Mane Lion going to bounce itself. And we've got 8 cards in hand, managed to make the land for the turn is excellent. And now this thing has flying, so let's go in down the middle this time, seeing as how our opponent swung in at us previously. And we need to ultimately start piling counters onto the Kami so that we can get a lot of mana from that next turn, like I said. Transmuting a Talaria West in order to search up a 0 mana permanent. We assume that he has a land in hand, he just discarded one. Shooted out a Nykthos, wants to play that for the turn. Devotion to Blue of 4. And there is Thassa, God of the Sea. So can't counter that or anything, we'll just have to let that enter play. We can point a Snap over there though. Alright, a Curiosity after that, so yeah, we can hurt the player with the Curiosity. But I want to be holding up the Unwind really, and there's nothing to stop us going for Snap and Fairy Mastermind at a later date, so we can do that later in the turn cycle if we want to. Talisman of Dominance for the Dimir player is going to fix the blue mana better. And we see a Rogue's Passage ready for the Thraximundar to enter play. Demon's Disciple going to have us sacrifice something. I don't really want to sacrifice anything. But there's not a whole lot we can do about this. Probably best to go for the Fairy Mastermind being sacked then. We can grab it back with the Evolution Witness. So let's go for some blue mana with the Verdant Catacombs. Problem is we have to go for the Snap now. And I don't really want to bounce back the... Yeah, we can bounce back one of these things because it doesn't really matter to us as much. So I'll go for Snap onto the Burglar Rat. Have the Ifara draw a card. And it can be plus counters onto the Kami this time. Not worthy of tap down double blue. I should have held a blue up for the an offer you can't refuse. But I don't think our opponent's going to bother countering a snap that brings a creature back into his hand. So that resolves. Untap both of the lands that generate blue. And then let's play the Fairy Mastermind. I will make sure to add green mana with the creature this time. And Fairy Mastermind, the Afara player scooping, even though he's been made to draw a bajillion cards. So we'll go... Ugh, now it's tricky. That's where it's relevant that players scoop, but I've said it a million times. Just going to point counters at the Evolution Witness again in order to get the land back. And we end up drawing into a land anyway. There is Psychic Possession as well. So the Thassa is made to sacrifice. Fairy Mastermind sacrifices as well. And then there's the Burglar Rat, so taking the blue player down to 3 cards in hand. Just discard the Verdant Catacombs, our opponents have seen it already. And then we could go for Pongify just for the sake of putting a couple more plus counters onto the Kami. But if we want to cast 2 spells next turn, we can do that anyway. Yeah, we're not doing much of anything else here, so yeah, we'll just keep as many cards in hand as possible so that we can double spell more often. Alright, a Jor-El is a good one, so once again, Wall of Roots going to be activated. Play the Jor-El. Bumbleflower, I will point at the mono blue player this time. We've got a couple of permanents to grab back here, but we want more mana from the Kami. And we can grab these back at any point with Evolution Witness. We've got to be careful of our maximum hand size, really. Alright, and now this player's scooping, because of course he does. So that's 2 players that we need to make sure to ban. And so we make a land for the turn. Guessing he thinks his discard strategy isn't going to work against us when he just can't keep us from gaining cards in our hand. But we'll play the Elandra as well with the Kami mana. The card that we've been bouncing back and forth in hand all game. Another couple of counters onto the Wall of Roots because that's down to 2 toughness. Jumps back up to 4 toughness, and there we've got a Nature's Law. The second spell that we've cast this turn, and it's Jor-El for us, makes a 2/2 cat token, which would make the Edict effects more difficult for our opponent. So then it can be Nature's Law, might as well grab. We're refilling the blue player's hand here. Can just be a couple of plus counters onto the Bumbleflower this time. It's got Vigilance, so we can start swinging in with that. And let's throw out a Breeding Pool. We can shock that in. I'm not sure how much mana we want to hold up, but I can go for a Surveil Land with this if we want to. So now Psychic Possession onto that player as well, I think would be alright. Just trying to do as much as possible to hinder my opponent while the mana is tapped out over there. So drawing him another card with Bumbleflower. And now we can go for the Evolution Witness, I think. So I'll grab back the Fairy Mastermind when plus counters are placed on there. And that is now a 9/8. So attack with everything. The Wall of Roots has Defender. Everything else is tapped or has Summoning Sickness. But we're dealing 14 damage. Drawing him into a bunch of cards, so there's still chance for mass bounce. The Seal of Removal is still relevant. Does not draw a card during his draw step, don't forget. So we get to use the Psychic Possession ability for the first time. We skip our draw step, but our opponent draws during his draw step, and we draw whenever he does. There's a Mystic Remora just to help the chance along. We drew into View from Above, which is another means of consistently casting the same spell over and over again. We will control a white permanent with Bumbleflower in play, and this will return to our hand. Okay, Mind Over Matter, I think can be an offer you can't refuse. So let's go for, can we go for another blue source with the Wooded Foothills? No we can't, let's just make it a Savannah. And we will attempt the Unwind with that. So we give our opponent a card draw with Mystic Remora and with our commander. Let's go for a bunch of counters being placed on the Kami. And if we can untap with the Unwind, then we'll be able to cast another spell to draw more with the commander. We draw with the Psychic Possession and our commander trigger. So that's the second card drawn, which triggers the Jor-El. I would never play this in paper. Same with Elandra. This is going to make tokens for us as well. But yeah, this is the most complicated deck I've made in quite a while. I didn't know what direction to go for with Miss Bumbleflower. People just generically say, oh, make group hug, but you might as well say, oh, just make a magic deck, because group hug could mean anything. So I've obviously gone for the instant speed plays and the double spells on a consistent basis, and the draw 2 cards on a consistent basis. Anyhow, an Unwind, we draw into Harrow. They do allow us to counter that, so either they couldn't do anything about it or they just decided to allow it for whatever reason. A Harrow for us, and they do play another land, so have something else for us. A Unify Theory, whenever a player casts a spell, They may pay 2. If the player does, they draw a card. Okay, well, we're not particularly interested in that. Would have just gone for the Harrow there in order to get an additional land into play, and that would have drawn us another couple of cards with the Commander triggering for the second time, which would have drawn us into Frantic Search, which is more land untapping shenanigans. So, I mean, you kind of get the gist there. I apologise that every single one of my opponents scooped, but it's Magic Online, we've come to expect it at this point. Like I said, a tough one to build, Miss Bumbleflower. Wasn't exactly sure how to go about it, but that was the tactic we kind of aimed for, and yeah, looking pretty good according to that performance. We were up against 3 other blue players with plenty of card draw, and yeah, apparently drawing a bajillion cards in blue just isn't enough nowadays. If you want me to try and get another video in with Bumbleflower, then be sure to let me know in the comments section. And give the video a thumbs up and consider donating on Patreon as well if you do want to try to support the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.